Hello, everyone. Today is a talk on unity consciousness and love. And love and unity, they're the same kind of word. They complement one another, they live inside of one another because you can't have true, authentic love without unity. Because love is incapable of harming another. And when we're in a state of unity, where we know we're connected to everything else, we spontaneously don't harm the other because we're harming ourselves. And so we spontaneously love, and then that love overflows into everything else and beyond. And so when it comes to relationships, when we're having relationships as humans, and we have a contraction into a human body and a forgetting of how we're unified with everything in the cosmos and beyond, then we can start to act selfishly. And as soon as we start to think we're separate and an individual and a human, and what we do doesn't affect other people, it's delusional, it's a sociopathic state. But historically, we have been sociopathic. I mean, humans, just by their level of forgetting, just by their level of ignorance through having taken the human body and being swept up in the mind, are sociopathic because they go around thinking, oh, I can get away with this, I can destroy the environment, I can get one over on that person and get ahead, or I can cheat on that lover and they'll never find out and it's not going to affect me. This is a delusional sociopathic state. It's a self-harming state, and it causes suffering and wars and divorces and hell on earth. It is a state that exists in a non-unified state. And so as the vibration on the planet gets higher, the idea that of individuality and of separation from everything else starts to dissolve. And as that happens, the capacity to love bubbles up and flows out into the world. And so if we're to survive as a human species, our level of consciousness has to get lifted up into a unified state. If we don't get lifted into a unified state, we will just continue to destroy ourselves and everyone else. Because even if we think we're not destroying the other, we are. Even if we think we're not destroying ourselves, we are, just because we're ignorant. And there's always a little bit of ignorance that remains even when we're in a unified state in the body, just because in order to keep a body, there has to be a certain level of forgetting of complete unity. I mean, if we entered complete unity, we would just drop the body. But that's okay. We can have a thread of ignorance while we're in our bodies, but we want to really start to realize our connection with everything else. So we don't need rules. The rules, the commandments, the do unto others as you would do to yourself, are just guidelines. They're just pointing towards a unified state that maybe we haven't realized yet. And if we haven't realized it yet and we're not spontaneously acting in a unified state, then the second best thing to do is to just follow the words of those who are in a unified state and kind of know that that's not a good idea to go cheating, lying, smashing up things in our life and destroying and blowing up our life, because the ripple effects can last for years, for generations, and gets passed down. Because if we are not dissolving the stress ourselves, it just gets shared in the collective for future generations to then have to deal with. So I really, really pray that we can connect to people or tools or situations or intelligences beyond this planet that can help move us, help shift us into unity consciousness. This is so important. And it will transform marriages, it will transform work relationships, it will transform governments, it will transform the natural ecosystem back into balance and the happiness that, the heaven could be lived on earth. Because any other state other than a unity state has the capacity to harm. And so I think that we're moving in that direction, even though there seems to be a movement in another direction. Sometimes that can happen. Sometimes there's a little shimmying along, one step forward, two steps back, three steps forward, one step back, five steps forward, two steps back. We're moving in the right direction. And how do we know we're moving in the right direction? Well, there is a consciousness that's waking up. There is a moving inwards. There's an interest in yoga, in meditation, in therapeutic tools, in liberating oppressed groups, in, you know, trying to be better than we have done in the past. And sometimes we will trip up because there's often a stress that gets released in the process. But I'm hopeful, and I think it's already done. So I think we can just relax and know that we're going to get there and to not give up. And we don't need to get lost in all of the junk that's happening out there. We can just go inwards and we can ask ourselves, where am I blocked? Where am I not able to connect with my heart space? What's blocking my heart space from overflowing? Maybe there's some resentment, some anger, some disappointment, some sense of being superior to others, or disappointed in other more complicated ways. There's endless blocks that the heart space can experience. So we can do that inner looking, and whatever we're experiencing, the world is experiencing, because we are the world. So if you are feeling blocks, the world is blocked. And so if you can remove that block, if you can remove that part of you that can't forgive or is holding on to the past or resent somebody else, if you can figure a way to let go of that, then the whole world benefits. And then the love that was suppressed through that resentment, that hate, that disappointment can finally be let through into the system, into your relationships, into the relationship with yourself. Because when that is blocked, the relationship with yourself is damaged and we feel broken. The universe will communicate to us that the system needs to get upgraded, updated, that the stress needs to get dissolved, that you're not being fully your unified self, because the unified self overflows with love. The unified self is able to pinpoint any of those blocks, and it cannot stand the blockage. Because as you raise your level of awareness, those blocks are vibrating at such a low frequency, and as you raise your vibration into unity, it creates such a stretch from where you're going and where you were, that it can be agony. So you have to remove the blocks. You have no choice. If you don't remove those blocks, you will be in so much mental suffering that you might snap or you might lose your mind and then collapse into a unified state through the loss of your mind. But there's another way of doing it. And, whatever you intuit would work for you. For me, a combination of meditation, of intuitive therapy, of yoga, of connecting with animals, of being in nature works for me. Whatever works for you, I really hope that you find it, that you are able to discriminate between paths that, are a bit slower or not fully clear of ignorance from paths that, will speed things up, which will reduce your suffering. And if you are on a slower path, it just means that that stretching might last longer. And I really hope that it doesn't. I know that everything's useful, and I've said that in other videos that, oh, anger's useful, all these emotions are useful and they can be transmuted. But I just feel that there's been so much suffering that it's time. And I just pray that we wake up into a unified state as soon as possible, because I don't see any reason why we should have to wait or why we should have to suffer anymore. And so I'm going to petition the universe that that reality can come through and everybody can have a connection to who they truly are without any delay, so that they can be the best husband or wife or partner that they can be, so that they can be the best parent if they have children, so they can be the best leader, the best communicator, the best, the best, the best, the best of whatever they're designed to be. And we really, if we are going to survive as a human species, have to connect with love. Because when we are in a unified state, there is only love that exists, and stress that passes through that ocean of love very rapidly, because the love, and I love the analogy of an ocean, I use it a lot. Love is like an ocean and it can absorb any drops of anger. Anger's like a drop of ink, it just gets absorbed. Disappointment's like a drop of ink, it just gets absorbed. Things can just get absorbed in that ocean of unified love. And so when we're dating, I'm bringing it down to earth now, when we're on a dating app and we're looking for people, or we're just trying to meet our next partner or whatever it is, people have different arrangements. There's always going to be strain and stress, misunderstandings, arguments, a certain level of drama if we're interacting with people that don't know who they are. Because when you don't know who you are and that you're unified with everything else, you hurt. You hurt other people. Hurt people hurt people. People who are not unified hurt people. And that's why there's so much pain in relationships, because the relationships are happening from a low vibration. They're not really happening from a unified vibration. And so there's always going to be heartache. There's always going to be people hurting one another. That will change. And I think it's about time, because it's so important to provide a place for higher intelligent beings to come to. So if we have other beings that want to come to this planet, that want to come through a human mother, we have to provide a womb which is able to contain a certain amount of love. We have to provide a space and a family unit. So when they do enter into that family unit, they don't de-stress too much. They don't blow up. They're able to function, because when you're a divine being and you, or a interplanetary being, and then you come into a human experience, you're so sensitive to emotion. You're so sensitive to those lower vibrations. They don't match yours, and so they can cause mental dysfunction. They can cause real irritation. They can cause ADHD. They can cause depression, anxiety, um, autistic rumbling, things like this. And we really need those people. We need those neurodiverse individuals to help us raise the vibration on the planet, and we don't want them to de-stress too much. So let's try and invite them through working on ourselves and making sure that our physiologies are calmer, are more loving, are more caring, non-judgmental, open, creative, able to even see those individuals for who they are. Because when you're not in a unified state, you don't see people for who they are. You think they're broken or you think they're strange, but they might not be either broken or strange. They might be a higher being from another planet that you don't recognize. And I did a video on this on autism, and I think autistic individuals actually can make incredible partners, because I think they're naturally in a more unified state, but they just have difficulty being in the world because of the lower vibration here, and the family units that don't can't can't hold space for who they are very easily. And so that's something I've cognized and something I'd like to dive into in future videos. So I really want to pray that they get the resources that are available to them. And also people to open up into loving all different types of people, and not just having this narrow, superficial ticking box of what they want. Like they have to be hot and they have to be tall and they have to have a million in the bank account. This is nothing to do with unity. How much money you have in the bank account has nothing to do with unity. How tall you are has nothing to do with unity. And if you're in a relationship with somebody who's not in a more unified state, your life's not going to be very happy. It's as simple as that. Doesn't matter whether they're a number one basketball player or whether they're an A-list celebrity or whether they are super hot. Your life's going to be made a misery. You'll have to disassociate and pretend not to feel a lot of things that'll be in front of you. And I'm not saying that people that are successful can't be in unified states. They can. I was just using that as an example, but we we need to open up so that we're able to see love where love actually exists. Love doesn't exist in a bank account. Love doesn't exist in fame. It doesn't exist in what your neighbors think of you. It doesn't exist in lust. It exists outside of that space. And so it really breaks my heart when people have these lists and they're just superficial lists. It, you can have both. Have both, but at least choose from a more unified space. Be open to choosing from a more unified space. Be open to attracting from a more unified space. Be open to evolving yourself to a unified space. So I think that's enough for today. And I hope we can all step into that new reality. Jay Gurudev.